Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to have my guest on. And my name is Andy, your host for today. I am with Integrity Data Insights. So I help other companies with their data and analytics. And guess what? My guest today does something very similar. So I'm been great getting to know Bill over the years, and just always been inspired by his kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and just really looking forward to having you on, Bill. So thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy. Really appreciate it. And yeah, it's been good getting to collaborate with you over these years.
Awesome. So let's dig in. So you're CEO of Futurety, right? I just want to make sure I don't. I always say it that way, but I want to make sure I'm saying it
Yeah,
the
it's hard
right
to
way.
pronounce. I'm not great at branding, but yeah, Futurity, correct.
No, it's a great company, but yeah, tell me. So I guess wherever you want to start. I mean, I know that's not kind of your first thing that you did. So maybe how did you get into being an entrepreneur, I guess, just in general?
Sure. Yeah, happy to talk through that. So, even as a kid, I always had this idea about wanting to own my own business. I think probably if you stopped 10 people on the street, nine of them would say they want to own a business. So I don't think that's super uncommon. But I graduated in the mid 90s with a degree in journalism. About the time journalism was starting to have a slow, painful demise, or at least decline. And what I found is that a lot of journalists were going to work writing for websites and doing this new thing called SEO, which was pretty
Yeah.
innovative in 97, 98. So that set me on a path of working for tech startups. And I really got the bug there. It was not what I thought work would be like. You weren't wearing a suit and tie, you weren't sitting in an office. It was, just the dynamic energy of tech startups I really got into. And I worked for about 8 years for various tech startups. They all had some kind of exit. So either an acquisition, a merger, something happened. They all raised money
Right.
to be part of that world. And I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to do it for myself next time around. So in 2006, I started my first successful company. I had a few bombs in there too, but the first one that worked was 2006. That was called Web Marketing. And it's very kind of cliche today to say I have a social media agency, but in 2006, we were pretty unique.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
between Chicago and New York, there was very, very little competition. And so we grew very quickly. We were profitable immediately. We doubled in team members and revenue every year. It was just a rocket
Yeah.
ship for everything. We rolled the dice every day, and it was a seven every day. Just one of those like really incredible, successful times. Um,
Right.
sold that company. That company was acquired in 2000. Let's see, my date straight. 11. So 5-year run. Very intense. And then after that, I started working with other startup founders. I did some investing, invested in about 20 other startups, started consulting with startups. But I found myself getting really jealous of the operators. So I'd be at the table, trying
Yeah.
to coach them, but I think, man, I want to be on that side of the table. And so I know a lot of people aspire to get to the point where they're just advising and investing, and I found that's not me. I'm definitely a hands-on type of guy.
Right.
So
That makes
Futurity will
sense.
turn 10 this year. So 2014 we started, and I really just went to my first my last few customers that I knew, decision makers, and I said, what would you buy from me? And that's why Futurity, you can see here, the name's
Yeah.
very ambiguous. The tagline is ambiguous. I knew I wanted to run a business, and that's all I knew. And so I met with past clients, and they said, what we're really struggling with is how do we organize and visualize our data? And I took statistics pass fail in college, so I knew I couldn't do that work, but I live 3 miles from one of the biggest universities in the country. So
Yeah.
recruited, some really smart grad students, and the last 10 years have kind of followed along that trajectory.
Yeah. And you're in Columbus, Ohio, right? Just to make
Correct.
sure.
Yep.
Yeah, not
Yep.
too far from me. Um, so yeah, it's amazing. I guess one quick question, just was it hard kind of like, so that company you built that was successful, was it hard walking away from it, or was it kind of like now's time?
Yeah, it was, I've well, like you, I'm a father, 3 kids, and I've sent 2 of them off to college now. And sometimes it's it's the right time, and you drop them off and you high five and you both feel good and no tears are shed. And sometimes you think about it for a month and you're crying the whole time. This was one where it was ready to go. Like I felt like we had taken web marketing, as that was the company, as far as it could go. We'd grown it to the point where it was successful and profitable, and I knew by being part of a larger organization, it was good for the employees. That's my smell check. Is it good for the clients? Because the clients built the agency. Is it good for the employees, because the employees also built the agency? Is it good for you personally? And so if it checks all three of those boxes, then it's time to sell. And I could look and say, this is the best route for our clients. It's best for the team. And so selling that was, and people, this was 2011. There was a lot of M&A activity. So we had a lot of suitors. We had a lot of companies.
This was going to ask, did people come to you or did you kind of go out to them?
Yeah, we did not run a process. It was all proactive. And again, it's hard to imagine now, but this was a day where there weren't a lot of digital agencies. Today, there's one on every corner, but every traditional agency was trying to buy a digital agency. And so I watched all my peers get gobbled up. There was just a flurry that summer. 2011 in the Midwest, just a lot of acquisitions were happening. We said no a lot. There were deals that just were not the right deal. But this one came along, and I would say in the first conversation, I knew it was the right thing to do and that it was going to happen.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for that little deviation, but I love that. So let's get into Futurety. Tell me a little bit more what Futurety does and kind of the people you work with.
Sure, absolutely. So we focus on helping organizations use their data to make really smart decisions. And at a very high level, because we work with organizations like healthcare and public health and government, we think data can solve really, really big problems. So there's a reason we jump out of bed, because we think we're solving really important stuff. From a tactical standpoint, if you are a healthcare system and you have 500,000 patients, you might not know why some patients are getting a certain type of surgery, or why some patients are adhering to their medical plan, or why some patients are more prone to certain clinical issues than others, or who's getting physical therapy. And Amazon can use data to know what you're going to buy before you buy it, and
Right.
Netflix knows what you're going to watch. I can ask you what you're going to watch tonight. You don't know, but Netflix does. Like, they know, the algorithm is there. They know what you're going to watch. We talked about music a lot. Spotify knows what band you're going to fall in love with next, even if you've never heard of them.
Right.
And so our philosophy is, we can take that same data, that same machine learning, that same analytics perspective, and bring it to organizations that are doing really, really impactful work in the world, like in healthcare. And so we can improve health outcomes by diving deep into healthcare analytics and understanding patient populations, or donors, or voters, or members. So that's the core offering. If you have a lot of data talking to each other and you're not using it to make decisions, talk to us. We very specifically focus on regulated industries. So healthcare, I've mentioned several times, medical devices, government, finance. A lot of times it's the businesses no one else wants to work with, because it's we go through HIPAA training, we're going through SOC 2, we have cameras in the office. Our team is in the office physically. We do background checks. So you don't want to trust your patient data to a team that has all outsourced, remote, unsecured networks. It's got to be ultra safe. And so a big differentiator for us is focusing on regulated industries.
Huh. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, that's it's probably it's got to be a different journey, right? Because you kind of, all the things you mentioned, there's probably a lot of things you have to go through that a lot of people wouldn't maybe wouldn't want to bother is the wrong word,
Right.
but just that it's probably like, it's not worth the hassle. But it sounds like you're motivated partially by, like, we're, not that Amazon and all those ones you mentioned aren't doing great things, but like, it sounds like, you could sleep well at night knowing that you're kind of doing something maybe a little bit beyond, just, just helping somebody make more money, right? Sounds like.
Exactly. Right. I think the whole team would agree with that. We do a lot of volunteer work here and pro bono work. So we also focus on, how do we take all the skills we have here and apply that outside of these four walls?
Yeah. So do you do a lot of, I know you and I both kind of talked, we both kind of done our share of kind of Tableau, Power BI type work. Do you guys still do a decent amount of that type of work, or
Yep.
as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. At some point, there's always a dashboard involved. You've got to have some place to visualize it. So, Tableau, BI, Domo, Looker, Superset. We just found out about a project this morning. So, we want to work with the best platform for our clients' environment. So we don't have referral agreements or incentives to recommend one. We sit with the client, say what's going to work within their environment, and then we help them stand up on that platform.
Correct. That's great. Yeah, I do the same thing, because I've kind of always gravitated towards Microsoft stuff, but I definitely am a huge fan of Tableau as well, because I think they're both. Do you, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but do you find any one platform that's kind of winning out in what you see? Like everybody's using this, or is it kind of pretty competitive?
Not necessarily. I think most government, at least in Ohio, are Microsoft shops. So I would say even, that's probably the biggest pattern I see is that an institution or an organization may be all Microsoft or everything's got to be on Google. So we're using Looker or so. I think there's platform. I'm sure there's some great statistics out there that could
Yeah.
quantify that. But I would say government, we see definitely skew towards Microsoft more.
Okay, great. Yeah, the two that I always seem to deal with the most are Power BI and Tableau, but I know there's a ton of other options out there. Maybe let's get into a little bit, just a little bit more deep dive onto the data stuff, because when you and I both kind of work with clients with data, and I guess what in my experience, what I've found is some of the businesses I work with, you kind of have to get them even to the basics. Like, some of them don't have, on-demand reporting to be able to even
Right.
see kind of do you do you see that as well, or are kind of a lot of your clients more further along the journey where they kind of have the basics and you're really helping them more with the predictive and that kind of stuff?
I would say that the phone rings usually because someone wants predictive modeling. They want to use AI. They want to use machine learning. But especially for a large enterprise, we're spending 6 to 12 months doing the basics, like you said, just getting the data engineered, getting the APIs, getting the scripts, getting everything talking to each other, getting it into one secured place. Nothing moves fast in regulated industries. So you go through layers of validating this platform, this product, this database, validating Tableau or BI or whatever they're using.
Yeah.
So I would say a typical engagement, if we're up and doing the really cool, sexy stuff in 6 months, that's fast. Generally speaking, you were spending 6 to 12 months cleaning data, engineering data, getting that tech stack in the right place. You run into this, clients get, SaaS salespeople are great. And you out of time have clients that have bought like multiple systems that are redundant or that they're not
Yeah.
using. And so, a lot of times we go in and just help them clean up their tech stack, understanding what products they're not using to their capabilities, which ones they need to get rid of, which ones they need to increase their usage on. I can truly, no exaggeration, I would say that the 3 deals I'm thinking of now that we're working on from a new business perspective all have some element of help us. They're frustrated. They don't know if they have the right tools. They don't know if they have the right technology. They don't know if they've signed the right licensing agreements. So
Right.
a lot of times we're coming in just helping with that.
Interesting. So it's like even beyond, wow, that's an innovative. So it's not like you're just saying, hey, give me what you have and I'll make it work for you. You're really like taking that consultative approach and really like, being a partner with them. That's fabulous.
And the great thing is we almost never lose a client. I think in part because once you're in there, there's a lot of stickiness, but we also do really great work. And so our first clients have been with us for 10 years now. So for them, we're doing some jaw dropping stuff. I mean, we've got 10 years to build off of. The client, we signed this week. We're going to spend some time ramping them up though.
Yeah, a lot of the clients. So some of them are kind of starting from zero, or and probably all over the map, I'm guessing.
Right. Yep.
Do you still do a lot? I remember kind of in our time together before, like you still, I don't know if you do it as much anymore, but a lot in the marketing analytics space. Do you
We
still
do
do
it. Yep, absolutely. And our roots are still on the marketing side. So, because my background was in marketing, that was just where I naturally gravitated. So again, for a hospital, we would take all that data, patient data, and say, how do we find your next 100 patients? And let's do that through Facebook and through Google and through MailChimp and through LinkedIn or, whatever those platforms are.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes the output, the what now with our data is on the marketing side. But we've also now expanded into clinical, financial, human resources, logistics, supply chain. So the roots were always data for really great marketing. Now it's turned into data to power your organization.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I love that, because I've kind of in my career, I've always been around the marketing department. I've like very rarely have I guess a couple of times in my career I was in it, like at the end of my career at LexisNexis when I was there, I was in I
Yeah.
ran the marketing database for, and that I guess technically was in the market, but for a long time I was like really close to the marketing. So I picked up a lot of, by osmosis, and then, a lot of them were my clients, so they'd run campaigns and such. So I've kind of always had an affinity for marketers, and kind of always cross paths with them
Yeah.
quite a bit. So so I guess on that note, let's talk about Huckle. So this is a really cool product that you guys developed. And I believe the tagline is "Know Your Audience." So, and I've been kind of following that journey with
Yeah.
you through the years that you've been doing it, but love to tell people what Huckle is and more about it.
Yeah. Thanks for being part of that journey. And you've been there from the beginning of this. So I appreciate that. Huckle is every CMO, going back to marketing, if you ask them what's their biggest question, most of them will say, who is our customer? Who is our audience? Whether that's, a patient, a student, a buyer, but there's someone that I am reaching out to my audience. And the bigger my organization gets, the harder it is to know who that person is. Huckle answers that questions definitively. So we've taken the guesswork out of phone surveys and focus groups. And we think those things are great. And we work with people that do primary research. But Huckle solves a problem that I think every marketer has. And from a use case, essentially, you give us 1,000 of your customers, or 10,000, or 1,000,000, their names, their addresses, their emails. Huckle in real time will process those. And the beautiful thing is, it will say, here's Andy Murphy in cell A1. And now we're aggregating every piece of data about Andy Murphy that we can. So this includes basics like your age and your gender and your income. It includes public records related to things like real estate or vehicle ownership, but it also includes magazine and catalog subscriptions. It includes surveys you've taken. It includes shopper card data. It includes app data, if you're using vacation planning or ride sharing apps. And every time you check share my data, that goes up into this people like us who aggregate it. So we have literally tens of thousands of signals about Andy Murphy, figure out which is the right Andy Murphy. And now we can tell you as a segment, your restaurant mainly caters to married women over 40 who have high household income and young children. And you may have thought your audience was older retired men. And that's, these are examples of things that we're learning with our clients. You may have an e-commerce shop and you think your buyer is a higher income than they are, and so you're not doing coupons and discounting. Or you may think your people getting a certain procedure done are older, and it's younger, more athletic people. So we're able to shape those personas in real time. You're not waiting 6 months or a year for the data. You upload the data, and then we say, here is your persona. And it's just it's changed the way we do business. We use it for our clients, but when our clients found out about it and saw it, they said, can we just buy this from you? And so now it's turned into its own company soon, its own product. So it's been a pretty amazing ride. I joke that if you've ever had a dog that chased cars, we're the dog that caught the car. And now we're kind of on this slide down the highway because it's just growing very quickly.
Wow, that's super cool. Wow, I mean, that's amazing. So I guess is your target market? I guess, is it other marketing agencies, or is it more brands that kind of want to understand more? Probably anybody, but is there any kind of particular people listening that be like, hey, we need this?
Sure. The biggest qualifiers are that there's a B2C perspective there somehow. So it's for B2B. I don't think it's a good fit for B2B. We have some B2B clients. I caution people it's probably not a B2B product, but we have a few. But if B2C is probably the biggest, and then you sense that there's some variations in your audience, that you might have 2 or 3 different personas and you're trying to pin those down. If you are a car dealer and you have people buying, a Lexus and an Acura, and people buying Corollas, then you probably want to know there's probably some differences there, understanding that those differences. But I have a couple mentors that I have been with me since the beginning that I've talked about Huckle, and I'll call the one up and I'll say, hey, we just sold a healthcare system on Huckle. And he said, Bill, that's great, but last week you sold a retailer, and the week before that you sold a restaurant. And so he's always saying, like, you got to niche down, you got to have a little more focus. So there's good and bad. But we do work with brands, but we probably work with a half dozen agencies who in a different world would have probably been a Futurety competitor, but now they're licensing Huckle and they're using it for their own marketing for their clients. So they're baking it into their offering. So the world being what it is, it's kind of strange now we're working really closely with organizations that would have been our competitors in a different world.
Right. That's super cool. And is it your daughter that came up with the name?
Yes. So in the investor pitch deck, it would say that Huckle stands for Holistic Understanding of Consumer Knowledge and Lifestyle Engagement. So we can make it, we can force it. But the truth is,
Yeah.
we were all standing around this whiteboard and we were writing very generic, uninspired names like People ID, Verify Soft, all the stuff that were just very forgettable. And my daughter at the time was around 5 or 6, and her pet cat is Huckle, named after the Richard Scarry Busy Town cat. If you've got kids, you probably recognize those books. And that was about the only words she could write. So she wrote probably 20 times on this whiteboard, Huckle, Huckle, Huckle. And as we're all debating the name, someone looked down and said, why don't we just call it Huckle? And so the name stuck. And here we are years later with that name.
I love that. That is amazing. Wow. I love that, that journey and kind of taking an idea and kind of developing it. And yeah, it's an amazing story. Yeah. So tell me, I guess, I think recently, Huckle, you've kind of added kind of an AI component as well. Maybe tell me more about that and what that does.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say again, you're a healthcare provider and you want to have a pool safety email or program that you want to do to encourage people to be safe around pools. So Huckle, first of all, you can upload all your patients, and Huckle will tell you who owns a pool, because that's public data. Right. And who has young children. So right away, we can segment and say, of your 500,000 audience, here are the 70,000 that care about this. So you're not sending an email to a retired person with no pool and no children. You're really targeting your messaging. But now with OpenAI, we can say create campaign, and Huckle integrates right into email campaigns, Facebook, Instagram, Google, and will generate text related to that audience based on all these inputs. All these inputs come in. Here's all the stuff we know about this mom with young kids in a pool. We'll generate images, of the mom by the pool with the kids, and you can modify that, edit that. So that's
so the AI is creating the images too, or
correct, right. Or if you have your own images uploaded, AI can pick, or modify your existing images as well. And then the really exciting thing we are in beta right now is what we're calling Hey Huckle, where you could type or say, hey Huckle, show me the people I have most likely to purchase buy one get one special on a Tuesday night, or hey Huckle, who's most likely to buy this new pair of this new workout gear that we're going to launch next week. Hey Huckle, who's most likely to donate? Hey Huckle, what students are most likely to matriculate? And it's processing all that data and then saying, here's the list of. So that's the big adventure in that we're working on next.
That's going to be mind blowing. That's crazy. Yeah, I've myself, I've definitely, sometimes I can be a slow adopter, I'll be honest. And so I've kind of gotten into the AI space and really fully embracing it now. And I love that, it can, I've talked to my kids about it. It's funny and interesting your take on it, but I got 3 kids also, and my daughters, they're kind of scared of it. It's kind of a strange thing because they feel like they should be the ones, the ones 21, the ones 19. You feel like they should be the ones that are like teaching me about it. They're kind of weird about it. My son is embracing it more. He's 15 and he's kind of all in on it, I guess. But yeah, I've integrated it quite a bit in my, as I've been doing these lives, like kind of what I'll do is, I'll have a conversation with the person like you and I did, and I'll kind of type up, like, here's the topics I want to cover. Help me write the post about it. And, I don't take it exactly as it is, but it's a great starting point.
Right.
And it's
absolutely,
it takes something
it
takes something kind of good and makes it better. It's like still my voice, but it's kind of, it's
I'm a big fan. I'm curious, why do your daughters not like it, or what are their concerns?
I don't know. They're scared of it. They feel like, and I don't know if it's like a campaign that they've, like, I think they're obviously very motivated by, probably what they see on social media, and they, they hear the rhetoric of it's not great and it's taking jobs or something. And my one daughter is going into education, which I think is going to be, I keep telling her, like, this is going to, like, you have to figure out a way to embrace this, because you can't ignore it. You can't just pretend it doesn't exist. So, but yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of figuring that out. What are your kids embracing it for the most part, or
I would say it's funny. My youngest is embracing it the most. Like it's keeping her off Chat GPT is a challenge. She's fascinated by it, so she's probably the most interested. My middle one actually has interned for Futurety a little bit, and she's doing some writing on personas out of Huckle that we're using to train our
Uh-huh.
persona builder. So she's into it just from the fact of like, knowing what she's producing is going to be help with this training. So I would say they're mixed on it a little bit, I would say also, but but I agree. I think we're probably going to see a lot. I think a lot of that generation is just going to adopt it by default. And just like we say, we Google something, they're going to Chat GPT something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love your thoughts. So kind of along the same lines, I would consider, based on what I know of you, and you're kind of like I would consider you kind of a thought leader in the AI space in your community. And I've been kind of getting involved in my community. There's a big kind of movement with Cincinnati to kind of position itself as kind of a AI
Yes.
hub. And I think
Yes,
Columbus, St. Joe's
definitely.
are kind of doing something similar, but just you love what you're doing. I know you're giving presentations and stuff. Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing with AI in general.
Sure. Well, I think there is a great community popping up. I think Cincinnati is doing an excellent job. So hats off to you for really, building that hub there. We've had there's a few really great companies in Columbus that have embraced it, and we're pretty early on. We're in before it became quite the buzzword. But we do spend a lot of our time educating our clients, our partners about AI. It's a very natural progression from data and analytics and visualization and machine learning to AI. So it was a very natural fit for us to be the ones there embracing it and be part of that.
Yeah.
So I think our clients just naturally saw us. So we go on site, we do client presentations for our clients. We get asked for that a lot, and just a lot of it is what you mentioned, calming fears around taking jobs or being our overlord. We have a presentation that's probably too much to go into here, but there's a lot of reasons why we really strongly believe and historically, anytime new technology has come along, it's actually created more jobs and improved the standard of living.
Right.
There's a great graph I like to show, but it's essentially, just 4 or 5 generations ago, almost everyone lived in poverty. 80% of the world lived in extreme poverty. So I don't mean you can't afford to have Starbucks. I mean, like, you don't have enough food to eat. You're living in
Right.
not safe housing. So we are
Right.
all just a few generations from being like really, really poor. And
Uh-huh.
every time a major technology comes along, whether it's like textiles, the ability to mass produce clothing, the ability to mass produce food, all this stuff that you would say, well, that's going to take jobs away from farmers, away from textile workers. It actually reduces poverty. And you can see this with every major innovation. So I argue that
Mhm.
AI is life changing. It's one of the biggest things you and I will see in our lifetime, short of the internet itself. But I would also argue, if we trust history, every time there's been something this big, it actually improves the quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe that because I worked at a grocery store for a while in high school, and kind of on that same lines. I remember it was kind of right in the age of they were kind of pioneers with self checkout.
Yeah.
It was like very controversial. Like they
Yes.
had these people would tell us, hey, I won't go over there and all this and that, and sure enough, I mean, those people either yeah, probably did displace some jobs, but they're probably doing something more meaningful, or take the automobile industry. I mean, think about it, back in the day when everyone was riding horses. I mean,
Right. Exactly.
now look at all the automobile, there's every corner, there's 5 tire stores around here in Dayton anyway. And,
Exactly.
all the industry that's, for something that didn't used to exist. So I think that same thing will happen here as well.
Right. I think one of those common jobs I see now is prompt engineer, which wasn't a job a year ago. So someone that can write, intelligent prompts for AI is a very in-demand job. Now that's one job, but there are many others that are being created like on that periphery. So I think it's, yeah, I talk to copywriters and designers and developers. It's the first time in my career I've ever seen unemployed developers. So there are jobs being shifted and deployed because now one developer can do the work of 2 or 3, and so you are seeing that start to take hold. But I would also argue then AI engineering, prompt engineering, cleaning up I say think of it as a sandwich. AI can give you prompts and starts and do some of this middle stuff, but you as a person have to feed that and train it, and you as a person have to clean up the end result. So it's like, there's still human involvement. It's just shifting where the humans are involved.
Right. Yeah, and I love it too. The one analogy I heard at a presentation, I think it was at the Cincy AI week, and this guy um, gave a great analogy. He's like, imagine if you brought in, you hired some carpenter to work in your house, and he comes in with a crank drill, hand drill, like, to drill through your wall, and you're paying this guy by the hour. You'd be like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Why are you using a
Right,
crank drill?
right.
It's kind of, I think that's a lot of what'll happen as well. So
I think so. And honestly, for people like you and I, we have to use AI to be competitive. But that's, we're the carpenter using that, and then the other carpenter, is using his DeWalt and drilling in, 10 studs for every one of ours. So I think there's also whether you like it or you don't, and I like it, but even if you don't, you're not going to remain competitive in most industries without embracing it.
Nice. Maybe let's go back a little bit, just business in general. I mean, you've been in business a while, I don't know, just let's talk about a little bit. What kind of lessons have you learned? What do you, what advice would you give somebody that kind of maybe wants to start their own business? Anywhere you want to go with it, but just, I guess let's just talk about that in general.
Sure. And I've changed and evolved my thinking over the years, but the one constant, the one thing, the hill I will die on, is that the market is always right. And so you can be very intelligent, and you may have a problem that you're sure is a problem, and you can sit around a whiteboard and draw this great product plan. And if no one writes you a check, it's a bad idea. And then people hate to hear that. People are sure it's like, well, the market doesn't understand. I'm too early. I'm too late. People don't get my vision. Every failed entrepreneur thinks they're, Steve Jobs, and they're just, a visionary. But I would argue a much harsher, probably working class Midwestern view that if people aren't writing you check, it's not a good idea. And that comes down to the market's always right. And what I've learned is with both of my successful businesses, it wasn't that I loved social media or I love data analytics and people say, do what you're passionate about. It's like, now I'm passionate about those things, but I'm more passionate about building businesses. And so if Futurety sold lawn chairs, I would love lawn chairs, and I would know everything there was about lawn chairs, and I talk about lawn chairs because what I really love is building businesses. And by subscribing to the idea that the market's always right, what you do is you say, what would the market buy from me today? And I'm going to go build that company. You may love baking and cooking, and you may be a wonderful bake and cook and chef, but if no one's writing you a check to do that, it's not a good business. You may hate baking. You may not care about baking and cooking. Let's not say hate. You may not care about them, but if you're in a community where people are lining up out the door to buy fresh baked goods, that's a really good idea. So it's really
interesting.
What I will beat new entrepreneurs over the head with. The market's always right. So if no matter how great your idea is, if no one's writing you a check, it doesn't work. Go find out what people will write you a check for, and then go build that company.
And that's what I want to ask about. Perfect. So, right or wrong, and I've shared this. I'll get these ideas and I'll run them by you at times and this and that. How do you kind of know, like, hey, this is worth exploring or not? Like, I know I definitely love your advice, but like, I guess, how do you get that answer of whether somebody's willing to write you the check for it without you writing, without you putting tons of money or time into something?
Sure. On the services side, it's much easier. On the services side, if someone says, I will, pay you this amount of money to build me a Tableau dashboard, or pay you this amount of money to babysit my dog, or pay you this amount of money to detail my car. Like on the services side, it's relatively low risk. You're investing your time, but you're not investing your time until someone is paying you for that. On the product side, it's much harder. And that's where you get into things like MVPs, or even what I've heard affectionately called engineering prototypes, something that looks like a product, but is really you doing all the work. So our very first version of Huckle, Jonah would correct me, I think we literally paid $4,000 or $6,000 for it. I mean, now we've invested well over $1 million, but the first version, it worked. You could put a list in, you got 36 data points out. And so we went out to our clients first and said, and we basically had like a PowerPoint that said, this is what would happen. And then we said, okay, give us 100 names. And then we manually were appending them, and they still like that. And then we built a really rough prototype, and they still like that. So we validated every step of the way before we wrote that big check for a market ready product. But I think and with things like Figma and some of the other like just workflow tools. You can mock up a product. I think you've even shared some with me that you've worked on where you mock up what the workflow theoretically would be, and then on the back end, you can have an army of interns actually doing the work. And then if the client's like, yeah, I want to license that, then you build it. But don't,
Well, I love
the
that
whole
because,
build it and they will come is not right.
yeah, I love that it's like you're co-creating with them. I mean, really, right? Because you're kind of
Yes.
like, sounds like what you're doing is you're iterating with the people
Right.
that are going to actually eventually write the check, right? And then
Absolutely.
eventually you're like, hey, would you buy this? Well, yeah, of course, because I spent all this time with you building it. You know?
Yeah, I was part of it. I mean, literally the table I'm at, we would have 5 or 6 clients in every phase of Huckle, and they would provide the feedback. And by the time it launched, of course, you're right. They're going to write a check because they were part of that development and they helped shape it to what they wanted.
Ah, that's amazing. Well, Bill, anything else you want to leave our audience with? Anything else we didn't cover that you want to get into?
Yeah. I appreciate the time. I'm always available. You can find us at futurety.com, or I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. I have a unique name. So please reach out to me. Happy to connect with others who want to keep the conversation going.
All right, Bill. Well, thank you so much for joining. This was great. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you guys so much for joining. Take care,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.